Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday Pray Day. Starting this new year off with these Thursday Pray Days, we're going to dive into a series called The God We Pray To. We've talked about some other aspects of prayer during these Thursday Pray Day sessions. We've talked about why we pray. We talked about how we pray. We've seen kind of the prayers of the Bibles, but now we're going to dive into, starting today, into the attributes of God, or who God is, that determine and so much about our prayers and why we pray to Him. Who is this God that we pray to? Well, the first aspect we're going to look at is that God is self-existent. That means He exists in and of Himself. He needs nothing outside of Himself. He doesn't need any outside energy, outside materials, outside beginning or force acting upon Himself. He exists in and of Himself. He doesn't need anything else, which actually means He doesn't even need us, or He doesn't need our prayers, but yet He asks for them. We see this idea that God is self-existent throughout the Bible, but in particular, we see it in a couple places. We see it in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, when it says, in the beginning, God. Before creation happened, before anything happened, before even time started, there was God. Already there. Eternal God, existing in and of Himself. We also see it in how God describes Himself. When we read the book of Exodus and we see Moses encountering this appearance of God, this interaction with God with a burning bush in Exodus chapter 3, and see in verse 14 that God describes Himself as, I am who I am. That the only way really to contain or describe who God is Himself, because nothing outside Himself influences who He is. He is God. He is who He is. He is self-existent. So why is that an important aspect when we talk about prayer? Well, that's an important aspect because it influences all these other attributes we're going to be talking about with God. But it's important for us because when we pray to a God, we pray to a God who needs nothing outside of Himself to do what He needs to do or what He wants to do. We pray to a God that now is implied His power, now is implied His knowledge, now is implied His greatness, His majesty. And so when we pray to a God who's self-existent, we must never get into our minds that He needs our prayers. That somehow with our devotion and our prayers, we make God who He is. No, He exists in and of Himself. It's funny, there is a concept that has creeped into kind of the American mythos, if you want to say, or American kind of concept of gods, and that gods get their power by humans. That when we show our devotion to Him, they have strength. But that's so weird and not biblical. For God is God because He's God. He has power because He is God. And so we don't give Him anything when we pray, but when we are praying, we go to the God who needs nothing. We go to the God who created it all out of nothing. We go to the God who existed before anything. And we go to Him and we pray to Him and He hears us. It's pretty wonderful, isn't it? And so when we are thinking about how we pray and the God who we pray to, we're praying to a God who is self-existent. He doesn't need us. He doesn't need our prayers. He doesn't need our devotion. But yet He made us so that we could have a relationship with Him. And this God, who needs nothing outside of Himself, chooses to love us in such a way that He listens and responds when we speak to Him. Isn't that amazing? So remember that this is the God we pray to. And so I pray that on these Thursday Pray Days and throughout the weeks, we can be praying and knowing who we're praying to. Praying all the things that are on our hearts, the things that are weighing on us. But we're also knowing who we pray to, because that is what matters, is who we know. And we know God, the self-existent one.